In 2001, just weeks after the 911 attacks, a series of letters laced with a fine white powder began arriving at media offices and the offices of 2 U.S. senators. This wasn't just some prank. It was a bioterrorism attack. The powder contained anthrax spores, a deadly bacterium that would go on to infect 22 people and kill 5. The nation, already reeling, was gripped by a new kind of fear. What was this invisible enemy, and how could something from nature be turned into such a potent weapon? Today, we're diving deep into the story of anthrax, a bacterium that has existed for millennia, but became a household name overnight. This is the story of how a common livestock disease became known as nature's perfect bioweapon. So, what exactly is anthrax? The name comes from the Greek word for coal anthrocus, which refers to the black, coal-like sores that can form on the skin of infected individuals. The culprit is a rod-shaped bacterium called asterisk, Bacillus anthracis. Asterisk, you can find it naturally in soil all over the world, where it can lie dormant for decades, even centuries. This incredible resilience is thanks to its ability to form Think of an endospore as a tiny, armored survival pod when conditions are harsh, too dry, too hot, no nutrients to. Bacterium hunkers down inside this tough, multi-layered shell. It basically goes into a state of suspended animation, waiting patiently. Then, when it finds itself in a more hospitable environment, like the warm, nutrient-rich body of an animal or a human, it wakes up, breaks out of its shell, and starts to multiply rapidly. This survival mechanism is what makes it so persistent and dangerous. Historically, anthrax has primarily been a disease of herbivores like cattle, sheep, and goats. They get infected by grazing in contaminated pastures, ingesting or inhaling the spores from the soil. For centuries, it was a known agricultural problem, causing sudden death in livestock and economic devastation for farmers. Humans usually got it through contact with infected animals, or their products, like wool, hides, or meat. This led to different forms of the disease. The most common and least deadly form is cutaneous anthrax, which accounts for about 95% of natural cases. It happens when spores get into a cut or scrape on the skin. A small, itchy bump appears, which then develops into a painless ulcer with a black center. With antibiotic treatment, it's rarely fatal. Then there's gastrointestinal anthrax, which is much rarer and more serious. It comes from eating undercooked meat from an infected animal. Symptoms are what you might expect from a severe foodborne illness: nausea, vomiting, fever, and abdominal pain. The mortality rate can be high, between 25 and 60%, because it's often diagnosed too late. But the form that strikes fear into the hearts of public health officials and bioterrorism experts is inhalation anthrax. This is the one used in the 2001 attacks. It happens when you breathe in the spores. Initially, the symptoms are deceptively mild, resembling a common cold or the flu: fever, cough, fatigue. This can last for a few days. But during this time, the spores are traveling to the lymph nodes in the chest, where they germinate and start releasing powerful toxins. These toxins are the real killers. They cause massive internal bleeding, swelling, and tissue death. The second stage of the illness comes on suddenly with high fever, severe breathing problems, and shock. Once this stage begins, the disease is almost always fatal, even with aggressive medical treatment. The mortality rate for inhalation anthrax, without early intervention, can be over 80%. Its history as a weapon of war is chilling. But the most infamous large-scale development came from the Imperial Japanese Army S Unit 731 in the 1930s and 40s. First, as we've discussed, it's incredibly lethal, especially the inhalation form. They can survive for decades in soil, water, or even inside a simple envelope. For years, the focus was on a scientist named Stephen Hatfill, whose life was turned upside down by the scrutiny. Though he was later exonerated and received a multi-million-dollar settlement, the FBI eventually zeroed in on another scientist, Bruce Ivins, a top anthrax researcher at the U.S. Army's Infectious Disease Research Institute. Using cutting-edge genetic analyses of the anthrax spores from the letters, they traced it back to a specific flask in Ivins' lab. Facing imminent indictment, Ivins died by suicide in 2008. The FBI officially closed the case, concluding he was the sole perpetrator, though some doubts and questions still linger for many. The 2001 attacks were a wake-up call. They exposed critical vulnerabilities in public health and emergency response systems. In the aftermath, the U.S. government poured billions of dollars into biodefense. This included creating the Strategic National Stockpile, a repository of vaccines, antibiotics, and other medical supplies ready to be deployed in an emergency. They also established BioWatch, a nationwide environmental monitoring system designed to detect the release of airborne pathogens like anthrax in major cities. So, how do we fight back against this threat? The first line of defense is rapid detection and diagnosis. Early treatment is absolutely key, especially for inhalation anthrax. If antibiotics like ciprofloxacin or doxycycline are given before symptoms become severe, the chances of survival are much, much higher. There is also an anthrax vaccine. It's currently recommended primarily for military personnel, lab workers, veterinarians, and others who are at high risk of exposure. It requires multiple doses and regular boosters, so it's not practical for the general public. But it's a critical tool for protecting those on the front lines. Research is also ongoing to develop better, faster-acting treatments. This includes new antibiotics and therapies that specifically target the toxins produced by the bacteria, which could be life-saving, even after symptoms have appeared. Today, the threat of a state-sponsored anthrax attack is considered lower than it was during the Cold War. However, the rise of non-state actors and the increasing accessibility of biological technology raise new concerns. The 2001 attacks showed that even a small-scale attack can cause widespread panic and disruption. Anthrax is a powerful reminder of the dual-use nature of science. A naturally occurring organism, a part of our planet's ecosystem, can be understood, studied, and harnessed to create life-saving vaccines and treatments. But in the wrong hands, that same knowledge can be twisted to create a weapon of terrifying power. The story of anthrax is not just about a bacterium. It's about our own capacity for both healing and destruction. It forces us to confront difficult questions about security, scientific ethics, and our responsibility to protect ourselves from the threats we create. Thank you for watching. If you found this video informative, please give it a like. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into science, history, and the world around us. Stay curious. Stay curious.